Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the online learning session organized by the officers, members, and staff of PMAP's Research Committee. I am Roland Suico, Silverband Incorporated President, and I will be your host today. Before we start with our program, may I request
Pandemic. Lord, come give us the inspiration to be the best we can be. May we be a shining example of your goodness and truth within, wherever we are. Inspire our thoughts, discussions, and ideas, and continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth for the greater glory of you. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Bayang magiliw, kalas ang silakanan, alam ng puso, sa dinig ko'y buhay. Lupang hihirang, gulat ka ng makiting, sa hanlulupig, di ka pasisiki, sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit kong buka, may tinatang kulat, awit sa kamlayang minamahal, ang isat ng wataw, ako'y tagumpay na nagiging, ang bituing at araw niya, kailan pa may magiging, luman at araw ng alhalik ang sita, ngunit ang isakin mo, aming higaya anak na may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo. We pledge our loyalty to Viva, upholding mass respect and dignity. Promoting closer ties and harmony to keep our stand of unity. We believe in a goal for a strong economy. We believe in the role of industry. We seek for guidance to our Viva when problems come of management and men. Aware to keep the faith and trust that we have of our fellow men. Aware to keep the faith and trust that we have of our fellow men.
once again, good morning, and thank you for joining us in today's online learning session dubbed How to Build Asia's Best Workplace Through Data. If you analyze the different facets under HR nowadays, you will find common key drivers of success. They include data-driven analytical decision-making, having everything digital and connected, showing in how their actions directly impact strategic business goals and continuous employee improvement measures. As people managers and business leaders, it is important that we apply data and research in our decision-making process. Through data, HR will better be able to understand their needs and to provide improved service to all other business functions and creating the best environment for them, especially to the real fulcrums of organizational success, the employees. Having said this, the research committee of PMAP came up with this program to help the HR community be adept in understanding the use of data in ensuring employees' experience of a more meaningful, fulfilling, and productive working lives. To share us more about our program, may I call on our Board of Trustee in charge of the Research Committee, Ms. Maria Elizabeth Nasul, SVP for HR of Energy Development Corporation, to give us her opening message.
Good morning, fellow HR practitioners. Welcome to our last session in our learning series, sponsored by the Research Committee. You know, time really flies so fast. The Research Committee team has 11 learning sessions and 12 major first in the PMAP, major program. The first one is the first HR hackathon, and the other is the first research conference. So thank you, team, for the creativity, the innovative ideas you all brought into the HR community, and the collaboration to mount all these wonderful learning events to develop the HR capability and our co-practitioners in creating a wonderful people experience in their respective companies. You know, all this were developed to achieve three things. Number one is it was really our desire, the research committee, to inculcate a data-driven HR, that in everything that we do, we are backed up by facts and figures to attest the effectiveness of our programs. Second, we brought this to you to develop an agile mindset, to develop the agile mindset of our HR colleagues, and instill in their minds that when they're faced with a VUCA scenario, we need to be flexible in our HR approaches, pivot as needed, and maintain personalization in all our intervention. And thirdly is really to build the HR capability and the network to partner with others. The pandemic has really transformed us for a better and for the better, and that we are happy to share with you that this committee has achieved all its target and objectives for the year. Thank you to all those who have supported us and helped us in making all this happen. And this morning, as we have continuously advocate data, this is what we need to establish credibility as practitioners. We have invited another expert to show us that the data-driven HR will definitely be instrumental in transforming a company to become the best workplace. And given the talent, the war in talent, it's very important that we are always ahead of the pack. This is exactly what we want you to add in your HR arsenal. So let us learn more by participating more in our interaction today. Feel free to ask questions, make comments, because this is your community and this is the network that we want to bring to you, learning and interacting at the same time. So have a great day to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trustee Beth, for that wonderful message and for sharing what our HR community can expect for the rest of this year. I am sure everyone is now excited to get into the core of this program. Excited na ba talaga ang lahat? I hope everyone is now ready. At this time, may I introduce our esteemed speaker for today. He is a dynamic HR professional who fell in love with the human side of business. With an eye for potential and the passion to see people reach their peak aspirations, he has been seeking unique challenges within organizations and leads them to create an amazing environment for people to do the best work of their lives. That's for the past 10 years. Friends, let us all welcome the people lead for Canva Solutions Incorporated, Mr. Alvanson So, CHRP.
Thanks, Roland, for that amazing introduction. Hello, everybody, and good morning. Thanks for sparing some of your time over the weekend, especially for us in HR. Weekends are sacred. So let's hope that we can make use of this morning's time to learn from each. I was beginning my career journey in Canva. I also was the typical type of person that would underestimate the sheer amount of data because it tends to make things a little bit more complicated. But I later found out that it's even more complicated to function in our respective roles without data. And so I'd like to share with you a quote that resonates with me as I went through and developed this material for all of you. So, in God we trust, all others bring data, shared by Edward Deming. I have a couple of colleagues with us on this call that know me, and whenever we work together, it's always been my initial query to all of them is that when you come forward with something, what data or what facts do you have to back that up? No? So, with that said, I'd like to also give you guys some quick expectations on what you're going to be listening in or hearing from this morning's talk. So we'll split the hour or so in 6 parts. I'm going to set the tone so that you guys understand fully what we are here to talk about. Some quick intros, what data matters actually in creating best workplaces. And with our personal experience of going through multiple accreditations with Great Place to Work and eventually bagging first place in Asia as the best or greatest workplaces in the small medium category, I'm also going to share with you what sort of information or data you want to be across and you want to collect if you aspire to turn your office or your organization into a great place to work. And then towards the end, I will also share with you, and I'd like you to pause and try to wrap your head around it and see how this statement resonates or lands with you. The first statement that I have is information can either make or break organizations. Try to reflect back and see if this sort of statement has sort of happened in your organization or in your experience as HR. And let me tell you a quick story to emphasize this point. So this is a story, or this is a photo rather, of one of our favorite fast food chains. So when you talk about data making or breaking business, several decades ago when America, when the United States of America was clamoring for hot food that tastes good, is prepared quickly, and tastes the same no matter where you order, it became a increasing trend in their country. And for that being, the restaurant industry was not yet designed to cater to that sort of need. Everything was prepared and with complicated recipes. And even if you have multiple restaurant chains in different states, typically some foods don't taste the same. McDonald's used this tidbit of information to actually capitalize their business that turned them into a multi-billion-dollar company that you all patronize today by focusing on that particular customer feedback or customer data. They revolutionized the fast food industry by tailor fitting or curating their processes, standardizing their recipes, even patenting their food preparation process by introducing the assembly line way of preparing food to make sure that the quality, the taste, the speed, the presentation looks the same no matter where in the world you order their food. And that has turned them into the biggest fast food chain that we see today. The next statement I'd like you guys to wrap your head around is information can create or diminish value. What does that mean? Have you found yourself in a situation like that where you had access to some information that you think could generate value, or if unheeded, could diminish your ability to capitalize on that? So that's exactly what this company did. So AirAsia, the budget airline that originated in Malaysia, found a opening on an opportunity in a very congested industry like the airlines industry or the travel industry, where a lot of people actually had money and would like to travel but could not afford the luxurious arrangements that most fleets would offer. So what they did was they differentiated that to be able to cater to that specific market segment and introduce no frills travel, where you can actually jump on a plane with a very low cost and get from point A to point B. So they use that customer data by understanding what exactly their customers need, what do they look for in an airline, and how do we cater to people that have the desire to travel but may not have the financial capacity to pay a full-blown trip. And so they curated a business model where they offer travelers or passengers no frills flight, which has been the standard in most budget airlines today, including our very own Cebu Pacific, for example. So because of that specific data, they were able to corner that market here in Asia. And now they're worth multi-billions as well. And now that as we kickstart the world after the pandemic, I'm sure many of us will be logging in and checking for those piece of fares very soon. The next statement is that information can either accelerate or impede or slow down just-in-time decision making. A lot of the times in our respective organization, decisions are made either very quickly because the information is there on hand, or it's delayed because we're still collecting facts and figures to make the right call. And having the ability to gather and collect information very quickly and analyze them timely can mean a huge benefit, or it can also result to huge losses. A classic example is a company called Yahoo. Some of you might still use this as their email, myself included, but definitely I don't use Yahoo anymore to search for any information online. I use Google, for example. So a decade and a half ago, Yahoo was still, I would say, is considered one of the biggest players in search engine services online. And despite them being one of the first companies to provide such service, they were experiencing some decline in this space as more companies like them penetrate the market, like Bing for Microsoft and Google, for example. And even in other countries where such technologies are barred, like say in China, for example, they also develop their own search engines that are being used more than Yahoo. So a couple of decades or a decade and a half ago, there was a bid for Microsoft to actually buy Yahoo for a staggering $44.6 billion. And at that time, the company, Yahoo, was already seeing some symptoms of market decline. Although they did not heed, no, they did not listen to that information and kept on and kept operating, only to succumb to the inevitable. Today, Yahoo has been bought by Verizon for a measly $4.4 billion. So they lost $40 billion in the last 12, 13 years or so, which is a huge, huge loss, no? Just because they weren't ready or they weren't committed to make a decision given the information at hand. So hopefully none of us in the call have experienced such losses. Next, there's no such thing as bad information, only bad use of that information. So not all information we get are good news. Some of them are bad, some of them are difficult, some of them are challenging, but it does not make that information of any less value. But if we don't use it properly, then that becomes a problem. Case in point, Nokia. So, for example, I'm sure most of you, or if not all of us in this call, may have had some interactions with this brand, either through their mobile phones or some of our telecommunications equipment at home, like your modems or your routers. So back in the day, 20 years ago or so, Nokia was the king of the mobile phone and the mobile telecommunications industry. Everybody wanted them as if it was a vital part of their fashion statement, or it's their part of their usual arsenal of telecommunication gadgets and whatnot. But fast forward to today, they are no longer in that position. They're trumped over by companies like Apple, Samsung, Huawei, and how did that happen? Of course, definitely did not happen overnight. No, they were slowly receiving difficult or challenging information. No? When they were at the peak, people were already demanding more interactive, more user-friendly, richer content on their mobile devices, which cannot be brought to life by Nokia's current product offering. So other companies took that feedback and started developing their own equipment. And that's where the first iPhone came in, and that's where the first Android phone came in. BlackBerry, if anyone still uses that, came in to offer that particular need and fulfill that particular demand. And yet Nokia decided to ignore that information or that data and continue to develop their phones the way it is. And of course, let it be told that many investors wanted to course correct Nokia strategies, but it was already too late. So now what happened is that they could have had capitalized on that opportunity and stayed on the top of the game, but sadly they lost that because they weren't prepared to use the data that they were receiving to curate or change the way they operate or the way they work. Another statement is there's no such thing as insufficient information, but there is such a thing as too much. I think in HR, in my own personal experience, we are bombarded with so many information. And the problem actually is decluttering the information and categorizing the right information that is relevant to our needs. And sometimes that distraction can really result to very huge losses or damages. Case in point is a department store in the US called JCPenney. So this is a picture of one of their biggest stores that filed for bankruptcy at the tail end of last year due to the pandemic. But before the pandemic struck, JCPenney was competing toe-to-toe with one of the other department store giants in the US. If you're familiar with Walgreens, that is their direct competitor. So the case here, the story here is that both companies or both malls were trying to cater to a specific segment or a particular customer category to cater to different market segments, particularly the upper class or the average or people who would like to spend or splurge. So Walgreens took the same information, but set them aside and really focus on their strategy, which is more directed to people within their original or their current market segment, which is the low-cost, high-variety segment. JCPenney, on the other hand, chose to listen to all of these other information and broaden their offering, expanded their distribution, took in more brands, and to cut the long story short, their investments actually were not investments, but rather divestments, because they were stretching, they were stretching their capabilities so thinly, unable to support each segment properly or appropriately. And with the pandemic throwing a wrench in their plans, of course, spending or the spending power of people drastically went down. So with now higher costs, higher OPEX, higher CAPEX, they couldn't keep the business afloat. While on the other side of the fence, their competitors, Walgreens, still exist today. So a lesson learned is that not all information are useful or relevant. Some of them are noise. And then lastly is information is actually not the enemy. The reluctancy and the hesitation of collecting, analyzing, and using data or information is the enemy. So if you are in a position, or if your role or your function in your current company is responsible for collecting and analyzing and synthesizing and applying the insights brought about by the information you have on hand, then you are in the seat of power to actually 10x or magnify the impact of your organization. So let me invite you to come forward and listen in on all the other insights that I would like to share with all of you this morning. So, very quick introduction, no? So after setting the tone, hopefully that has roused your curiosity. Very quickly, putting the lens back to HR and what it means for HR to be able to capitalize on information and data to create best workplaces. So, number one, HR has evolved to become the biggest repository and processor of information for the modern day organization. Believe it or not, gone are the days where the person sitting at the right side of the CEO is the CFO. More and more companies nowadays put the CHRO, or the people head or the HR manager at the right side of the CEO, because most information are coming from people are actually just as valuable as financial statistics. And sometimes they are even more important, especially during the height of the pandemic, as every company was looking at how to keep or reposition their workforce as the situation or as the environment kept changing. HR is also having a louder voice in today's organization as a result of the pandemic. A data-driven HR is actually a more strategic HR. Gone are the days where HR is just on a conference hall is a clear sign that people and information that people bring will be more scattered and distributed. So there has to be a focus or an emphasis on our ability and capability to consolidate and analyze data from all sources, despite distance, quickly, because that will be the key to our future success. So, as I've said the word data and information maybe 50 or so times already by this point in the conversation, but just a very quick bird's eye view. What exact information is HR really responsible for? So I took a gander and list down some of the things that we typically juggle in our day-to-day work. So a list of 10 things, from hiring to engagement to offboarding and all the way to compensation and benefits. And I haven't even spoken about OD or L&D or industrial relations and anything like that. So these are just the most common data point that we are information that you don't think or are not as important or equally relevant as others. So the next question that I'd like to clarify or raise is which data actually matters? So not all data and information are created equal. Hopefully you guys agree. Some information are noise, some information are relevant, some are critical, some are urgent, some are important, some are not. And for me, I created a very quick acronym to help you decipher what sort of information actually matters or relevant. So the most important data are those that move the business forward. They make a difference in the way you work. It helps you overcome your challenges or blockers. Information that are valuable to the accomplishment of the goal or your organizational strategies. And lastly, information that helps empower decisions and actions. If there are informations that don't fall under these four categories, in my personal opinion, are not as important compared to those that do. You know, at the end of it all, we as HR help provide strategic value to our respective organizations to be able to move the business forward. You know, so with that statement in mind, and I'm sure this is a common say in the workplace, it's not going to be difficult to remember this. Now, we're all here and we're all probably interested what makes, Canva, for example, a company that you probably already know and whose products you probably use. Hopefully you are using Canva. What sort of information is important in making an organization a great place to work? So a very quick snapshot of what we've able to achieve so far. So we've been nominated 2 years in a row, back in 2020 and 2020 and 2021, both ranking third place across the Philippines. But after they segmented it within region, we did end up banking the first place in the best workplaces in Asia. If you take a look at the stats, and I'd like to emphasize this, data or information that you use to help turn your company from good to better, again, the amount of information or data you need to turn your company from good to better might be, 30 or 40% in terms of value. If you take a look at in this graph, the typical company would score in their trust index survey an average of 53%. To become a better company, if you add 30 or 40%, are where our blind spots are, where do we need significant development, what people are saying, what our employees are feeling, what senior and junior leaders are sensing, so that we're able to pinpoint exactly where to put our focus and effort in. And that's going to be a lot of information. So what does that look like in practice? Let's talk about the makings of a great workplace. So what I'm going to share from this point moving forward are actual, real criteria of the makings of great workplaces. And this comes from the different organizations that Canva has partnered with. And I'm sure even in PMAP as an organization, when you look at the criteria of what makes employer of the year, And in PMAP, there's also a lot of categories there that organizations need to prove that they're truly elevating the people agenda to be able to, so that you will be considered as a role model or a standard, or setting the gold standard for what's best for your employees. No? But let me first give everybody a quick disclaimer. The effort to become a great place to work is simple and straightforward, but it is not easy. What is simple does not necessarily have to be easy. Case in point, for example, if you're trying to live a healthier lifestyle, the simplest way is to eat right, exercise, cut down on the sweets and caffeine, and sleep early. Simple and straightforward. But I am personally guilty of not being able to follow this regimen organization and see, and maybe perhaps run an audit and see how you fare against these 8 criteria. So TLDR, or to simplify, if you feel that you will score high if you run a survey to check all of these 8 things or 8 domains, then you probably have a good chance of being certified a great place to work. So these are the 8. Your ability to welcome people or hire people, inspire your employees, how you're able to communicate or speak to your employee base from leadership down and the other way around, how people within the organization listen, how people cultivate a culture of gratitude, how we invest in people's development and growth, how the organization prioritizes people's well-being. I would say the most simple and straightforward way to look at your business, look at it through these 8 lenses. Later, as we go through the next few slides, try to confirm if your current assumption or your current assessment of your company across these 8 is true or not. Let's dive in. First is your ability to welcome information about you, about your organization when you speak to them. So, case in point, when you interact with your candidates, do you actually ask why did they apply in the first place? Why your company? Why not other company? What makes your company stand out? What makes your brand stand out that caught their attention? What did they like most or least about the entire selection process is also a very good source of information for you to curate your selection process better. Did they feel welcome, fairly treated? Were they well informed and properly communicated with? Or was it just a bombardment of questions and trying to tick the boxes in your survey or in your questionnaire? Did you actually treat the candidate as if they were already hired? And when you speak about delivering outcome, were they congratulated and thanked for going through the process? And if they didn't get in, were they given proper feedback and encouraged to reapply? Or did we ghost them? Yeah. And for those that we were able to successfully onboard, are the newbies properly welcomed and inducted into the company and given appropriate time to get to know the organization? Spend weeks or even months getting to know the candidate before we hire them? Did we actually reciprocate that gesture by giving them weeks or even just a couple more days to get to know the company, their employees? Let's move on. Your ability to inspire. I'll break this down into 3 sort of segments. Of course, inspiration can mean many things for many people, but for great workplaces, inspiring means people actually come in to their work, not just for the job, but something more than just fulfilling their roles? Do people have a higher or deeper reason for wanting to report to work? Is it for your mission, for your vision, for your cause, for your social responsibilities, for your ability to give back, or for your intentions to make the world a better place? Is that something you have in place? What are you doing to give your employees interesting answers to the question, how is it like working in your company? Apart from the benefits and compensation and maybe the wild parties, is there anything deeper or more personal that makes people actually want to wake up eager and driven and energized to work for your company? Inspiring people is more than just goal setting and goal achievement. It's actually beyond the numbers. Apart from work, what else can your employees do to feel fulfilled and driven at work? Are they given, monumental projects? Are they given life-changing opportunities? Are they given accountabilities or scope of work that they didn't thought was possible? And how do you foster a sense of pride in the company? The people are proud to tell them, hey, I work for this company. You might want to work for my company too. Inspiring people is also about sharing your vision to them. And this is actually a domain or an area targeted to your leaders, yourself included as HR. What steps have you taken to bring people towards the same direction? Yeah. And do your leaders embody the vision they see for the people and its employees? Or is this trusted, transparent, timely? When your leaders speak, do the employees listen? And when the employees speak, do your leaders actually listen? Very important. Truth be told, a lot of emails coming from the top when sent through emails are not read. Maybe the subject or in the first paragraph could be, but seldom do we see people actually read it cover to cover. I'm proud to say that in Canva, we actually have a very high read-through rate because, and this is evidenced by the fact that people have very interesting, meaningful questions at the end of any broad communication, showing evidence that they actually read through it, tried to understand it, and wanted to get further clarity. Do people generally speak with good intentions? Is also a good barometer to see if people actually speak or they just do talk. Yeah. Are people generally unbiased or at least aware of their biases? Very important, especially in male-dominated industries who handle female employees. That's a very hot topic nowadays on gender diversity. But apart from that, even for those people that have a very excessive need to have people to think and act like them, only these kinds of people they trust. That's a huge no-no. And those are the things that we need to be sensitive about, especially if these are the types of people that are actually doing the speaking. Yeah. Let's talk about transparency. Can people have difficult conversations safely and openly? Yeah. Of course, not all conversations about rainbows and butterflies. So some conversations can be heated. And so can people actually hold these conversations with good intentions? Is objective or critical feedback within your organization embraced or frowned upon? Can people actually tell you your areas for development without you feeling attacked? Is news and information shared as is, good or bad? There's no word mincing, there's no sugar coating. Can people trust leadership that what they say is actually what they mean and not prone to misinterpretation? Great workplaces are able to convey meaning with very little friction, misinterpretation, and misunderstanding. Clarity is a huge commodity these days, especially as we live through this new normal filled with ambiguity and complexities. And lastly, your ability to speak timely. Are your leaders able to nip problems in the bud without unnecessary conflict? It's just business. We're here to solve problems. It's nothing personal. In Tagalog, no? Minsan yung trabaho, personal. Pero, wag natin pepersonalin. No? So, things like that happen, especially when emotions run high. But it does not mean that you delay timely information, because as time goes by, whatever you wanted to say will have its value diminished. No? Are employees proactive in asking for feedback? Talking about speaking, being able to say it out loud that you want feedback is also a reflection of your culture. Great workplaces have this safety net for people to actually approach a person they actually either have a conflict with, or they have a misunderstanding with, or even from their managers to bring up a conversation on what they could improve on, or what they could do better at, what they should stop, or continue doing. These conversations for me are the most meaningful, especially when done effectively, and can be a treasure trove of a lot of information. Of course, when someone does the speaking, someone has to do the listening. That's the fourth domain, or that's the fourth area of priority, or fourth area of importance that great workplaces invest in. The organization's ability to listen. So listening can be kickstarted through asking questions. Can employees ask questions freely and expect a clear response? Can anyone, no matter their rank or position, ask questions to anyone and be genuinely listened to? Or will these questions just be falling on deaf ears? We also have to take a look at our feedback channels. When the organizations try to open their ears, it typically happens in multi-channels, whether it is through a hotline, whether it's through emails, suggestion boxes, or through the eyes and ears of the managers distributed across the organization. Great workplaces take a look at and do a careful audit on these channels, making sure that it is used properly and it's addressing and bridging the right gaps. So, how can people voice out their concerns freely and transparently without judgment? Is a question you might want to ask yourself if you don't have these channels in place. What efforts do we put in ensuring these channels have high integrity and confidentiality, especially if that channel is being used to carry sensitive or confidential feedback? When we talk about listening, we also take a look at how our ability to listen actually invites people to get involved. Are employees encouraged to contribute in shaping strategies, setting directions, or improving ways of working? Or are all of these thinking activities happen inside the manager's brain? By inviting people to come in and voice their thoughts and ideas, you open your ears by inviting people to open their mouth. No? So keep your ears open. Of course, are leaders prepared to not know everything and trust their teams to figure it out? If your organization today still believes that all your leaders have the answers to all your problems, then I would like to urgently ask you to rethink this philosophy. The reason why we in HR invest highly on hiring brilliant people is not to hire them and tell them what to do. We hire brilliant people because we want them to show us how it's done. So again, being able to flex your listening muscle is one of the key things that will turn your good company into better and eventually a best workplace. One of the human characteristics that are becoming rarer and rarer and rarer in the office or in the workplace is our ability to show thanks. Our ability to appreciate, recognize, and reward people have almost always taken a back seat in exchange for prioritizing goals, strategies, revenue, market share, cost cutting, and all that. But behind all of these quote unquote more important goals are the people that actually make it work or make it happen. So, great workplaces or the best workplaces out there give high priority to our ability to appreciate, recognize, and reward people. Do we actually show or point the spotlight towards their achievements? Or do we only point it to the manager? Do we actually invest the time to make people feel and touch their achievement? Or is it just a Skype or a Slack message saying thank you or good job? Do you actually give them a reward they can sink their teeth into? How does your company go above and beyond when your employees go above and beyond? Have you thought about that? No? We expect our employees to do and run the extra mile. Do we as an organization do the same? Of course, one of the very important domains great workplaces invest in is their capability to develop people. And here we have the 3 Ds of developing: discover potential, develop skills, drive growth. Do we encourage people to explore their untapped potential, or do we just box them into the work that they do and label them as an accountant, label them as an HR ops, label them as a bookkeeper or a receptionist or a manager even? Do we actually look at how to support their interests and see if they can actually do not necessarily more, but do something different? Do we give opportunities to people to try things they think they could not do? Or do we hesitate because of fear of failure? Do we promote based on tenure or based on result? Do we actually put more value in output or outcomes? No? Do we arrest underperformance and reinvest in corrective initiative? Or do we just stop at arresting underperformance? And speaking about underperformance, do we focus on recovery or replacement? Things to ponder. And for the best workplaces out there, definitely we promote the former. Recovery is still best because you actually hired that person in the first place. It means that that person is a good, high potential, high performing individual. So if they suddenly, falter, there could be a reason why. And if you bridge that gap, you might be able to recover a once high performer. Second to the last is caring. More important nowadays, especially as the pandemic continue to ravage the country. But setting the pandemic aside, we don't need a pandemic to show that we care. So the 3 things that I'd like to share with you is, how do you focus on people's overall work-life balance? It's not about clocking in at 8 and leaving at 5, or not booking meetings after 5. That's not work-life balance. Work-life balance is about how do people actually avoid choosing between work and life. If someone needs to tend to their household or their family, are they torn to finish their work the night before because they have to be somewhere the next day? Or can they pause work so that they can resume life? Iba yung fast forward work so you can play life. You have to pause because you have different roles. Speaking of different roles, do you offer flexibility for people with equally challenging jobs and challenging personal lives? And how do you support employees at times of significant life events like crisis, marriage, or someone has a new child or got hit by COVID? Yeah. Do you actually encourage people to recharge? Or are you more glad that people are not taking time offs? Yeah? Do we encourage people to take breaks, incorporate self-care in their day-to-day, and ensure people have enough energy and time left to fulfill their other life roles? Or pag sinoli natin sila sa pamilya nila, drained, and they're just gonna go home and sleep and turn their homes into a hotel? Yeah? Wellness as a priority is also a people agenda you will see commonly in the strategies of great workplaces. What programs do we have in place to foster holistic well-being? Are leaders equipped to spot if someone in their team is unwell? And does the organization equally prioritize employee well-being and achieving goals? Not a prerequisite, but a co-requisite, that the achievement of goals sits on our ability to prioritize well-being. Happy employees do happy work. Happy work results to great results. A very fundamental equation. If you turn it the other way around, bad or unhappy employees turn in bad work results to bad results. And then lastly is celebrating. We are really good, organizations today are really good in setting goals, but not all companies are good at celebrating when their goals are met. No? I'm sure you will feel the same as I have in the many years I've had experience working for other companies, that when goals are done, we immediately move into the next goal or create another new goal. We don't take a pause in celebrating that achievement. For great workplaces, that is a no-no. That is a sin. That is a cardinal sin not to be able to celebrate. So I'd like you guys to look at these two segments on how you celebrate work, on people's achievements at work, and how do you celebrate life, because behind your employee is a person who has a life worth celebrating. So do we give as much focus on people passing probations or getting a promotion to someone getting married or celebrating their birthday? No. Personal things like these don't go unnoticed, especially in great workplaces, because people come into work as people first before their employees. So let us also do our fair share. And now, I've spoken about all of these, and you might be asking, Vanson, that's a lot of information. How do we actually collect data? So we know now the questions, and how do we now sort out, and how do we now dive in? I won't go into the details since the presentation will be shared to you after the session, but a very quick matrix here is my own personal guide, on how do you actually get access to these information. So on the top, you'll see the different segment groups: individual, small groups, and org-wide. And on the left are the different types of information. You have sensitive information, important information, and confidential information or data. And these are the different sort of channels that you can use, or the mechanisms you can use to collect that data. On the slide, you will see the different explanations on why these are my own personal recommendations. But of course, within your organization, depending on your company size, if your company is relatively small, you might not go as far as the org-wide options, or you could actually do more of the group or individual if you think that that begs the higher need in your organization. Now, I'd like to spend a little bit more time to unwrap the gift that I have for all of you that have attended this learning session. Data gathering is not a one-time activity. It is a regular activity that happens in the workplace. And if we are able to build good habits around which and when and how and where and why do we actually collect data, then we are poised to be more strategic, more value adding, more focused and directed in helping our people thrive and our organization succeed. So if you remember all the 8 subdomains of what makes or the makings of a great workplace, I've taken the liberty in transforming on the left side the guide self-reflection questions into a survey question on the right that you can use. I give you the liberty to use them, rehash them, or reword them to fit your organization's need and tone, and see if how your employee base agree or disagree to these statements. I've set these questions up for every category, from welcoming to inspiring. Of course, the XYZs, you can just turn them into your company name. Speaking, listening, thinking. And if you take a look at the message or the statements, it's usually from a first person point of view. I feel appreciated, wanted to say. No? Okay? And I encourage you guys to actually use 2 types of scales. One is a scale that offers neutrality. A neutral option allows people to defer taking a side, especially for those who are just new to the organization, may pick the neutral. People in this space can easily be swayed to disagreeing, however. So if you color code this, your strongly agree would be red, your strongly agree would be green, and your neutral would be the gray. Very often than not, it's easy to turn the gray to red, which is why you want to understand better how big of a portion your gray area is and focus your programs to that based on which of the 8 aspects you score the lowest. So you can bring those gray to green. Another way of using scales is to avoid or remove neutrality and offering a no neutral scale, where you just have or offer a slightly option. So between agree and disagree, you have a slightlier version of that, slightly disagree and slightly agree, and then you have your polarized strongly agree and strongly disagree option. By not allowing people rather to use neutrality and pick a side, even if it's just 1 point towards agree or 1 point towards disagree, you end up with a more durable data. Do take note, however, that this can be perceived as more forceful. So pick the option that you think works best. In my opinion, a non-neutral scale works best for your leaders because you want them to be more accountable of their feedback, while the neutral option is best for org-wide or for compulsory participation. So with that said, I hope that you've learned a lot, and I'd like to leave you my own personal guide for myself, or my own quote. Human resources will always be a contact.
We'll try our best to address them accordingly. Now, do we have questions coming in already? May mga tanong po ba tayo? Parang wala yatang tanong because kompleto yung presentation ni Vanson earlier. Sige, I'll ask first sige, ako na lang muna yung magtatanong para they would also be encouraged to type in their questions. I'd like to affirm, Van, when you said that not all data or informations are valid. No? Some are just noise that sometimes if we fail to validate them, that can actually mislead our decisions. And so with that overwhelming data in the organization, you have created a very, very good positive acronym to qualify whether that particular data is valid or not. Yung move, no, na binigay mo earlier. Can you give us a practical tip, Van, for us to start, especially for small organizations or those startups organizations who have no HRIS yet, they are not yet automated? What practical steps can you suggest, no, for us to begin with?
Very good question, Roland. So number one, of course, the most important information at the beginning, if you're starting from scratch, no, is make sure that you have the information to first be compliant. No, compliance is a very important aspect. It is a discipline that we hold dear as human resource professionals. So making sure that we have the information about our employees, tracking properly their compensation, having the right policies in place, having the right processes established, no, collecting the right and only their most relevant personal information, as there is an increased focus on data privacy. So we only collect what we need. We don't over collect, which also helps us in our endeavor to streamline the information that we will process. No? Hindi na uso yung fill up ka ng 10-page bio data, no? Because not all the information you actually need. No? And if ever you do need them in the future, you collect it just in time. You don't store it. No? That's the first practical step, yung compliance. And then the next step after compliance is to make sure we take the time to keep them updated and relevant. Pag hindi na kailangan, let's say this data was used for this particular project or initiative and it's done, you don't need it anymore, you can shelf it. But if a particular program or initiative continues to build on top of the program or on top of that data, make sure you have the right discipline and the right diligence in place to keep those data relevant. Because using the wrong information to move something forward,
those information are not anymore relevant, that could mislead us even further, no, when we make decisions. Okay, sige. So may mga tanong pa ba? Okay, so may pumasok dito, may isang tanong from Julius Montecalvo. With your current organization, Sir Vanson, do you have standard retention of information within your HRIS system or within a specific project?
So for compliance purposes, some informations are kept longer. So for example, for employee records, for example, it's 5 years, no? After they've left the organization. I think this is a standard compliance with the Department of Labor and Employment, for example. But for some information like culture surveys, for example, when we run engagement surveys and take a pulse of how people feel, we generally keep them literally forever, because these allow us to establish trends, especially for data collection that are done sparingly and far in between. Like for example, when you run culture surveys, you don't run it every month. You run it maybe once a year or twice a year, most often, and see what feedback are you getting as a response to that product. If people are generally positive, or they receive that new product or policy or benefit or whatever positively, then you can counter that with the information you collected. Did you yield the expected result, or did something come up as a surprise? If it's totally off tangent, ito yung intention ninyo, but the outcome was very different, you compare that to that data and see, what did we miss? Why did we not achieve the result we intended to achieve? Did we not consider something? And compare. You keep doing that comparison up until you have polished your product to meet your goal. No? Kaya nga siya, diba? Important to the goal. No? We want the information to be valuable to the goal. No? Yung V in the move. No? So that's that's typical standard, no, of how we preserve data. Thanks, Julius.
Okay, thank you, Van. So, That's a very good point, though, especially that we really have to establish also a retention policy as far as the data is concerned. Now, there's another question here. Hi, Vanson. What are your thoughts about predictive analytics trends such as automation via RPA? Is this something Canva would look into in the future?
The future is broad and definitely a lot of technological advancements and a lot of focus on artificial intelligence and machine learning has started to creep in, even in human resource practices. No? For now, it all depends on, for me, in my personal opinion, all of these technology is supposed to supplement, not replace. No? I will still hold on to my own quote that HR will always be a contact sport. So you can never truly remove the human aspect of it. Yes, there could be some abilities that these machines or these automations can help us do our job better, but it should not replace us in doing the job itself. So these predictive analytics, these automations, all of these things are being reviewed, not just for their effectiveness and their sort of cost benefit or ROI. That's one way to look at it, the business side. But the other way to look at it is from the human lens. How do you make sure that when you incorporate all of these things, that they don't cut against the grain your culture? If your culture is very human centric, you want decisions to be made on a human level, you want to communicate things and you want to arrive at decisions using personal interactions. By incorporating these technologies, you might end up diminishing that component or that side of your culture. And so that has a indirect, then later will become a direct impact to your culture. If that's something you have an appetite for, then feel free to consider that. But if you think that your culture is more important or sacred to you, then you have to find other means.
What to do. Now, the challenge here, Sir Vanson, is actually if this approach will not be executed properly, then this may also lead to a chaotic working environment. Can you share a specific approach or your best practices in this field that really helps your organization in moving forward?
Hiring brilliant people does not mean that you hire brilliant people that do not share your values. The values is the oil for in my analogy. It's the oil that keeps your machine running smoothly, running friction free. You know, yun yung purpose naman ng oil, diba? Is to lubricate the moving parts. And having that oil make sure that people work very well together. So even if you bring in really intelligent, really brilliant people, but if they embody your culture and call your values their own, you're not going to run the risk of these people stepping on other people's toes. You're not going to be afraid of these people overshadowing and being or looming over your more junior employees. You will also not fall risk of having only a handful of people that know a certain skill, because you can trust that these people once in will help cross-pollinate their skill across the organization. You know? Having the right values and making sure these people are not just culture fit, but they're also culture add to your organization helps diversity. No, it helps.
Okay, sige. When can you say that a survey drive biases? For example, do you agree to release an employee satisfaction survey after giving bonuses?
Very good question. Some other companies even milk tea pa ata para mag-answer ng survey. Definitely a survey, the timing of a survey has to be decided very carefully. If you're trying to, for example, when Canva launched its remote work check-in survey, asking people how they are doing after the pandemic hit them, we roll that out not after influence action. It's not to it's not just to affirm whether your decision was correct or not. Iba din naman yung you wanna run a survey to check if your intervention worked or not. That's a very different perspective as well. It's not about biases. It's about confirming if you did something right or if you could still do it better. But definitely, if you think that the survey's schedule or timing will be greatly influenced by external factors outside of the intention of the survey, consider moving that survey to a different time slot or to a different schedule.
Okay. So, thank you, Vanson. Do we have some more questions? May mga tanong pa ba? Anything that you'd like to ask to our resource person? Calling once, calling twice. Okay, so parang wala na yata, no? Okay na sila, no? Vanson. Okay, so that concludes our Q&A. Thank you everyone for actively participating our discussion. Thank you, Vanson, for being with us this morning. Now, to give us a brief summary of the discussion today, may I call in the chairperson of the research committee, Mr. Mark Cancino.
Okay. Hi, everyone. And sama ko na rin si closing. So, thanks everyone for today. Thank you for spending your Saturday with us. I know it's rest day for us, but still a very good way to start our weekend with listening to Vanson. So thank you for those also not only here in Zoom, but also those watching on Facebook and also on YouTube. So I'd like that Vanson is actually used to be my coach in Canva or my manager in Canva. So power of data is not only for the business, but also in people management. And through data, we can effectively link our people strategies to business strategies. And Vanson demonstrated us by providing us sample data sets to help us in people and business strategies. And the reminder of move. So not every data would be effective. It should be a data that makes a difference, overcome challenges, valuable to the goal, and empower decisions and actions. So nag-agree yung aso namin dito. And thanks as well, Vanson, for sharing with us the 8 steps with specific guide actions to evaluate your practices, even sharing guidelines on scales. And let's remember, like what Vanson said in the Q&A portion, that let's remember to ensure that data leads to understanding and actions, not just for confirmation. So my main takeaway is, in order for us to make the best workplaces, focus on employees not only as workers, but as humans in organizations. In Canva, we have that value. Be a good human, empower others, and a lot more very human values. And like what Vanson said as well, it shouldn't just be technology, it should still be the human touch from not only from human resource professionals, but from all the people across the organizations. So we're happy. I'm personally happy and fortunate to be part of Canva's people-centric culture. And because that is where employer branding meets real life. So there, we are happy to conclude PMAP Research Committee's learning sessions for the year. So we had a lot. So it's actually a good way to advance. We started from building your data-driven HR function, workforce planning, employer branding, professional branding, talent management and development, employee engagement, and then lastly for the session, building work places. So watch out for our salary survey by the end of the year, and let's all have a great weekend. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Chair Mark, for putting all those important points briefly. Now to PH. We hope that this session was helpful to all of you. Marami pong salamat. Stay safe, everyone.